you, guys, everyone?
How's it going? Did you guys survive St. Patty's Day? Did you think about the banshees the whole time?
Yes, did you? Marina, how was your weekend? How was your last week?
Great. I was out of town. I went to California for a work conference and did lots of filming and lots of stuff. What about you, Lexie?
I think it took me a full 2 weeks to recover from St. Patty's Day. So, you know.
You saw the dyeing of the river, right?
I did. That was super fun. We may not have the rolling hills of Ireland, but at least we got a green river. So
Hey, it's something.
it is something.
And everybody's Irish that day. So
Everyone is Irish that day. So I know that last week we talked about kind of the origins of ghosts and how they're like so ingrained in like American society. And we did mention, we gave a little Easter egg about what might be coming up in this episode. And I think we're both super excited to announce that
live from your Spotify playlist
and our studio,
we bring you a guest who is none other than me, Marina's husband, Mitch.
Woo!
Hello, it's the husband, Mitch.
Mitch, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I instantly go to, I'm a Gemini with a double Capricorn moon, Legally Blonde reference, you know. No, my name's Mitch. I'm your husband. What else do people want to know?
Mitch, where are you from?
Where am I from? I'm from the Midwest. I
Ooh.
moved a lot.
Tropical.
Yeah, I guess so. Lots of corn.
And why are you with us today?
Because I have a ghost story?
You have a
Yes.
ghost
I
story.
have a ghost story. All right.
So, Mitch,
That's me.
why don't you tell us your story?
All right, I can tell my ghost story. So if we go back in time to, I think 2007, whenever Green Day's American Idiot came out, so I think that's 2006, 2007, or it was just really big at the time. I was in high school, and I was in my room, you know, playing my guitar, trying to learn every song from the album. So layout of the house. So you walk in, there's like this big, I guess, like entrance area, and then there's this staircase that goes up. There's two bedrooms when you first go up the staircase, and then like you walk down this hallway. It wasn't a hallway, like you could look over the staircase and see the opening area. There's a bathroom, and then my parents' room. So from my room to my parents' room, there's a direct line of sight. So everyone was gone this night. Don't know what time of day it is, anything like that. But I was doodling on my guitar, trying to learn American Idiot. And I look down the hallway, and I see this little girl in a big sun hat, sundress, and she like walks in, basically into frame in the doorway, turns her head, looks at me and says, "Where's Daddy?" And I yelled very loudly, and I bounded down the steps. I don't think I touched a single stair. I think I jumped down the full flight of steps, and I ran outside the house, and there was this big rock, and I sat on that rock for a solid 30 minutes before I had the courage to go back inside. And then I went back inside, and I watched TV until people came home, and I didn't tell anybody for about a year and a half, 2 years. So we'll fast forward a bit. We're in a car ride. I'm telling all my family this. They're like, haha, you're crazy. Now that you're like, why did you tell nobody this? And I was like, I don't know. I was freaked out. And we had moved, but we knew the people who rented the house after us. And they were like, hey, did you guys used to hear footsteps in the master bedroom when you were downstairs? And they're like, no, but our son did, because like you would sit downstairs on the couch and you could hear footsteps, and we always thought it was like pipes, stuff like that. And they're like, well, we kept hearing it, so we looked into it, and we found out that a little girl was murdered in the house like 20 years before you guys lived there. And I was like, ha, I'm not crazy. But yeah, that's my ghost story.
Okay, first of all, I have a lot of questions.
Oh, right.
Okay, so when you saw this girl, right, so you saw it in the hallway, right?
In my parents' room.
In your parents' room.
In my parents' room.
And is that the bedroom that the footsteps
Yes.
were heard from? Okay.
Yes.
When you saw it initially, like, what did it look like?
She was like, you've seen the girl from The Ring, like her color tone, not see-through, but just lack of
Right.
So it was
light.
it was something that you knew she wasn't alive, though?
I don't know. It was just some creepy girl in my house. I
Okay.
wouldn't.
But with a sun hat on? So
Yes.
was she, like, going to the beach?
I don't know.
Lake Michigan?
Big, like, if you took Madeline,
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. She
Yeah.
lived in the house with the
But-
vines.
but instead of, like, raincoat and, like, rain hat, it's, like, the sundress version of that.
Okay, so she was wearing clothes. This is interesting because sometimes you hear about like orbs or like a shadow person, or you see something on a wall. But if you're seeing like a clear, not that she was clear, but like if you're seeing like an actual like apparition of somebody, that's a very specific kind of ghost.
If you listen to our last episode, did she have feet?
From my memory, she was full human, no Casper legs,
Because the Yurei
no whispery.
were like human figures, but they did not have feet. That was kind of their defining factor.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so from what you're describing, it sounds like you saw a interactive personality ghost.
What is that?
So an interactive personality ghost are ghosts that are really common in hauntings and a lot of times in haunting of houses. And they appear very similar to the way that they were when they were alive. So these ghosts can walk, can talk, and occasionally acknowledge the living, which is what happened to you because she asked you where her dad was, which literally terrifying nightmare fuel. But that's the kind of ghost that it seems like you saw. That is really interesting.
So, do you know who murdered her?
No, I have never looked into fact checking those people.
Well, because I'm wondering at the significance behind asking for her
Right.
dad.
Ooh, if that matters.
Like,
Yeah.
if the dad murdered her.
Yeah, maybe she didn't realize that that's what happened. Maybe that was the last person she saw.
Wow.
But in that type of ghost, is that something where they have unresolved business and they're just roaming around the earth, or like what's the significance behind that type of haunting? They don't seem malicious because if you never had another encounter with her, this isn't Paranormal Activity, the movie, right?
So what you're describing in terms of like paranormal activity,
Paranormal
right?
Activity, yeah.
Movies like that, that's more of what they call poltergeist.
So the poltergeist is malicious.
So basically, poltergeist, it comes from the German word noisy ghost. And that means that these ghosts are mainly malevolent and sometimes like act in dangerous behavior. If you've ever seen the movie Poltergeist, like it's almost like a trickster. They're
Yes.
kind of like tricky. But a lot of times it's more like, I guess, nefarious than that because it's loud, it's obnoxious, it's making its presence known, but it's not doing anything in terms of helping you. It's like a nuisance.
Right.
And so that's more of like a poltergeist. So when doing some research into an interactive personality type ghost, it seems that these ghosts, they appear intelligent, self-aware, and, like we said, sometimes interact with the world in different times and space. A lot of times these ghosts, like you were asking why these ghosts particularly appear to people, a lot of it is tied to the places that they haunt, and that would make sense if you find out later that your home is haunted because there's been a murder there. A lot of times these ghosts also will be drawn to people who share similar attributes to the people they appear to. So whether like teen angst or anger, or you're grieving, or you're even happy, or they're not just the sad emotions, but sometimes these ghosts will appear to different people for reasons, and that makes sense. Kind of like even back last season we were talking about how paranormal stuff kind of continues to happen to the same bunch of people, and whether that's because they're like third eye is not blind anymore, or they're just more in tuned because it's happened to them. That would make sense.
Yeah, and I definitely feel like, so I'll just ask you, do you feel like there was a particular instance that like you connected with the ghost, or do you feel like you've always kind of had that like affinity for, you've like felt this kind of like more spiritual realm kind of thing?
I do kind of have one other weird like
Occurrence?
Ghosty moment.
Go for it. Tell us.
I was 4th grade, and we were in like an in-class assembly. It was very weird. We had like actors come in. I was sitting there and I like weirdly could smell my dog. Like I was like, why do I smell Shelby right now? This is weird. And then like went away. And then when I came home that day, turns out that my dad had put down my dog, like while I was at school.
Interesting.
That is
Were you really
interesting.
close to Shelby?
Yes, I had known her my whole life. Like she was there before me.
So maybe Shelby wanted to say goodbye to you.
Yeah.
And there was some kind of like she had to go by you to say goodbye. Or something like that. Because obviously if you're in tune enough that you like, I think dogs are perfect examples of like, okay, in the scary movies, the dogs are the first ones to bark. They're the first ones to, unfortunately, die because they experience the stuff first. So maybe they can also tell then who they're going to be able to come back to.
Yeah, and it's the same kind of thing. Like when paranormal stuff happens or ghost, it's like babies and animals.
Yeah.
Because they're pure and stuff, and they can see that. That also kind of reminds me of what we talked about at the beginning, shared death experiences, where you kind of know somebody's passing, or you get a sense that like either you have like a weird ache, or you just have like a feeling, you have a knowing, and it's like unexplainable, or you smell them, you know, something like that. And that happens a lot. And actually, when it comes to ghosts, that is a part of a haunting, is like a smell, a certain smell. That's really, really cool. Interesting. It's sad, but also like it is nice to know that like maybe she was saying like, hey, you know, I'm passing on now.
Yeah. So in having these like multiple situations where you've like encountered this kind of beyond, does it bring you peace, or like what kind of emotions do these experiences invoke in you years later?
Because I'm very much a like figure out like logically, like let's see if I can explain this away that's not supernatural. Like I don't know, maybe one of the actors there had a perfume on that just smelled weirdly like my dog, and it's just someone in the environment that is new, and then it just happened to be coincidence. Maybe this whole thing with the girl at the house just happened to be like, I don't know, I dreamt it, maybe that happened. I don't know.
Right.
I just know that I have a very vivid memory of like these two experiences.
Right.
And couldn't tell you much else.
So when you saw this figure, you would hear footsteps after this happened. How did that make you feel? Were you scared? Like, was it like a terror?
No.
Okay.
That also goes into like the weirdness is like I heard it and I was like, it's not that it was like creak, is like you could follow where someone like footsteps was walking, like you knew where my parents' bed was and you could follow footsteps of someone like walking around it.
So did you attribute the footsteps post encounter with the girl?
No.
It never went together?
It wasn't like, oh, she's up there right now. It was just...
Did it only kind of come together when you spoke with the people who had a similar encounter?
Yeah. It was kind of like once I actually told people things, then it kind of...
Became real?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's just kind of like, these are weird things happening.
So when it comes to haunted houses, actually, there is a law that... I know it's in Texas and I know it's in New York. It was actually decided by the New York Supreme Court that you have to disclose if your house is haunted. Going back to what you found out years later from your family friend and after like being, I guess, like telling your family what had happened, there is a lot of validity to that, because I think that just like our bodies remember trauma, I think places also remember trauma, just like we were speaking about last week in terms of like where they have haunted houses. Like you had mentioned that it was in a tuberculosis ward or something really crazy, and mine was like in an abandoned meatpacking factory where these traumatic places or things that happen hold a lot of, you know, value to it.
Yeah.
So if you're more left brain in terms of you're trying to figure out things and rationalize like, oh, I just saw a girl, but maybe I was dreaming, or, you know, maybe someone was wearing like my dog's perfume, which I mean, could be, they're actors. So like, you know, chances are, but,
I've had a lot of dogs wear perfume also.
yeah.
Also, going back in memory vault here, I realized that
I killed someone.
no, no, that Shelby's buried at that house where the ghost happened. Both of those events happened in that house.
That's very interesting that, well, like Lexie said, kind of that if these houses or places kind of hold that history, I wonder if there's something to like you became sensitive to it with the Shelby experience and then kind of continued onward through the girl thing.
Yeah. I will say this, because this is kind of like the ghost story podcast, right?
Yeah.
I know just through my own research and just by the sheer amount of content that I consume regards to paranormal activity, hauntings, different type of spiritual beings or things that happen, that places like houses that are haunted, or like especially when things traumatic happen at houses or just anything really, it can really affect you, and it can affect your mood. It can affect the way that you see life or it's colored, and it also like it does last. And you saying that in terms of like with the dog and then also seeing this person, I think it does have a correlation obviously to that house. Like I was saying earlier, Texas has a code where it's like you have to disclose at this house if there's been a murder there, if there's any kind of like reports of hauntings, because it genuinely matters.
I think that it's important because regardless of your experience with the supernatural or what you believe in or what you feel is, what you feel you're experiencing, it's tied to that house. And so mortality is tied to that house.
Definitely.
And it's something that, like, Shelby's buried there. There are legit bones in the backyard.
Yeah.
Yeah, possibly more than just a dog.
You never know. Like,
you never
genuinely,
know.
Genuinely. I think about this all the time when it comes to, like, why places are named stuff. One of the towns I grew up in was called Bedford, and I looked into like why it was called Bedford. Well, bed of fords. Fords are trees, and it turns out this used to be like a huge like area for native trees and arbor. Names and places have like extreme significance, and also we as humans assign value to that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So like we give power to ghosts or energy or like the haunting. You know what I mean? Like we do, because they feed off of us. It's a power thing. Yeah. And maybe that goes into like the multiverse and whatever dimension we're in. I don't know. But that's a speculation, but it could. But do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I think too, I don't know. I always think it's so interesting to hear like ghost stories, and I think it's really cool. But at the same time, like, I don't know why that. I think because we've always tied hauntings to negative experiences. Right. But this was not a negative experience for you. Neither of them were technically negative experiences.
Weirdly mundane.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something about me. Maybe my fight or flight is just really broken. There's no like fear. There's nothing like that. Mm-hmm. Even though if I'm in a basement and I turn the lights off, I will run up the stairs.
I mean, classic.
Yeah.
Classic.
Because it's terrifying.
But if we go back to season 1, it's kind of the same thing with near-death experiences, where maybe if you have them and you're you're not tormented by them, it's these like more positive experiences.
Definitely.
Than not. Or like you said, kind of just is now part of your memory.
Yeah.
It's a part of you.
Yeah.
So.
And I think that is a really great way of looking at it. I'll share a story, actually. I kind of almost forgot about it until you started talking about like how it's not positive or negative, it just is part of you. Well, we don't even have enough time to unpack everything that I've seen in my life, and like I said, I think that it has something to do with the fact that if you're around that stuff, you're going to see more of it. Like frequency bias, right? That's going to happen to you. But when I was growing up in the second house I lived in, I was really young, and I was probably around 4 or 5. Now, I have a really good memory. I just do. It's partially photographic, so I'm able to like get away with a lot more stuff than I should because I can remember a lot of stuff. And stuff had happened in that house on and off. We always had problems with pipes. There was different problems with ants. It was just kind of like doomed from the jump. There was something there in that house that like did not really want us there. But one day I was playing with my sister. She's 3 years older than me. And we were playing with something, and I broke a little, like it was It was like an egg Barbie. I don't know if that makes sense. Like she was like in an emerald egg. It was some kind of like Russian Barbie thing, and we were playing with it, and I broke off the arm, and I didn't want to tell her, and I was like, oh my gosh, like what's gonna happen? And so she ran to go get my mom, and it was a whole thing, and I was like looking for it. I was like frantically looking for it, and the lights were off in our bedroom that we shared, and as I was looking for it down the hallway, I saw this lady approaching me, and she looked like she was from the 50s or 60s. Like she was wearing kind of a pencil skirt, and she looked kind of older, but she looked like someone I'd probably seen pictures of, or maybe not, but she looked kind of familiar, or I got a sense that she was like familiar to me. And she was walking down the hallway, and I just remember her coming into the room with me, literally, and bending down and handing me the not even 2 centimeter Barbie doll arm. And when she handed it to me, I tried to turn on the lights. And when I turned on the lights, she was shaking her head and like closing her eyes and like holding her hands over her eyes. So I shut off the lights. And then she walked out of the room again, like down the hallway. And when I turned the lights on again, she wasn't there. And I had found the Barbie doll arm, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I found it, whatever. And I told my mom, I think I was like, some lady helped me find it. And my mom probably is like, whatever. Well, as I was telling her about this, kind of like, I don't know if I had just maybe suppressed it, or kids are super susceptible to, I guess, spirits. And you may not even know about, what I mean. Like there's countless stories of me and probably other people like talking to walls and laughing at things that aren't there, like babies babbling. Like you never know what kids do. I mean, I was like 4 or 5. So I don't know if I just like repressed it or just like a memory that was kind of lost. But years later, I saw a photo of this lady, and I was like, Mom, like, I swear, I was like, this lady helped me find Abby's Barbie doll like arm when I was little. And she's like, really? And I was like, yeah. And she was like super weird about her eyes when I turned on the lights or whatever. And my mom like stopped. She was like, stop. And I was like, what? And she's like, that's my grandma. I was like, is that? I was like, really? And she's like, yeah, she had problems with her eyes. She actually couldn't look in the sun towards the end of her life. Like she couldn't, she had to wear protective sunglasses. Like she couldn't look in the sun. And I was like, really? Like that was something that when she told me that, I was like, I think I literally was visited by my great grandma. Like that is a memory that I've had for forever. And that, whether like it was a ghost, whether I even made it up, I don't, like you said, like you gaslight yourself into oblivion. But like, why would a kid make that up?
That's so specific too.
So specific. Why would a kid make that up?
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was something that when you just mentioned how it wasn't positive things or just like happy ghosts or whatever, like that was something that actually happened to me that I think about and I'm like, wow.
And it's weird that like that's not something that you start like, hi, my name's Lexie, here's my ghost story. Like
absolutely.
These are like, hi, my name is Mitch, I saw a little girl. But like they're not in the forefront of your mind. And
No.
like how can they not be? But they're kind of maybe a more human experience than we think. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it becomes sort of just like one of those things that happened in your childhood. Even though it is like a big event, with time it just becomes something that happened.
Yeah.
Like a scar or things like that, where you're like the story, you're like, I have a scar here. It's like I have a few on my hands. Where are half of those from? I don't remember anymore.
But like it is so ingrained in our like pop culture of like scary movies, and there 15 ghost tours probably happening as we speak in downtown Chicago.
Definitely.
So it's a big thing for so many people to experience, and then it'd be like, okay.
Well, I think like what you guys were saying, I can see both sides of the coin, right? I think it is about history and time. And as we grow older, that becomes our history. And so history and time, you have more things happen to you and you forget about other things, but it's a part of you. Just like, Chicago, old as it's a second city, right? But it's old. So there's going to be a lot of different stories that are told, ghost stories included, but you don't think about that when you're walking to Stan's to get a donut.
Very
but you're
true.
like, you know what? I bet there's several ghosts that are hanging around this corner because this place at one point burned to the ground. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I agree. I agree with both of those sentiments, really.
I just think it's interesting, and maybe that's like an untapped thing in psychology that we don't talk about, or not even psychology, just like something that we don't talk about is like we talk about like family stories and things like about our past, but I don't know. That's such a cool thing to have. And like not everybody has like I mean I've not had like I've seen a person. I've had like weird experiences, but not like seen somebody. And I just think that's so cool.
I think it goes along the lines of like you don't know you're weird until someone points it out to you.
But are you really weird? Is this a weird thing?
I was going to say the Catholic Church, right? They acknowledge ghosts. And I'm sure a lot of other religions also acknowledge ghosts. And whether that's like genuinely they believe like a ghost, or they believe that there's more out there that we don't know about and there could be, and these experiences are had by so many people that they have to put a name to it, like ghost. You know, like what is a ghost? Like we learned the origins of it last episode, but like what is it?
In the subject of what are ghosts, do you think it's legitimately your grandma was just chilling there and has been all that time? You're like, you know what, today I'm gonna pick this up and give it to her? Or is it like in essence of someone that stayed because they had a presence so big that it stayed in this world, kind of like a shadow of them, and then it slowly fades over time? Only when like the perfect light happens do they like come to being, or like are they somewhere else and then they go poof and then they pop up here like I'm a knock over some plates for a bit and be haha and then I'll go back to what I was doing. There's a lot there. It's like is
definitely
if this person is existing, does time exist linearly, or is it kind of like Interstellar where it's kind of like he's just poking around everywhere at like all these different timelines all at once? So it's like for them, it's one moment. For everyone else involved, it's all these different, and it could be 20 years apart. But for them, it was like, oh, I was here. Oh, I was there. Okay, now I'm out.
This is a good question. And maybe we can answer it next week. But I think that there may be several different ways to answer it or even think about it. You know, like I think that in doing this podcast, we try to always bring it back to reality in terms of like what we've learned and like how can that help us, I guess, in our journey today or tomorrow or whenever you listen to this. But I do think that like life is linear but also not, and that's kind of how it is with everything, especially if you're trying to get a better sense of things like death, because it's so almost unfathomable that someone is here one moment and gone the next that you can't almost think about it. Like, you know it's true because it happens, but are they gone? Like, how long are they in their body for when they go? Like, what? Like, you know what I mean? So that's a great question. Hopefully we can answer it. And if you guys have any idea or any answers for what Mitch just said, and that was a lot, so I'm expecting a whole paragraph under our episode this week, we would love to hear what your thoughts are, because I think that's an excellent point.
So I think that this conversation is an amazing gateway into this world of the beyond. I'm excited to kind of see where this goes and potentially getting more guests on to talk about.
Yes, absolutely. I'm super excited because I think that it's great to have other perspectives in here. And so hopefully in the next couple episodes, because now we're at 4, which means we only have, if we're doing math, guys, and I know none of us really likes math, but we have 2 more episodes left. We're going to try to tackle questions about the spiritual realm and the afterlife. So if you or anybody you know is perhaps a death doula or a shaman or even practices Reiki, okay, we are looking for somebody to talk us through that.
If you happen to be a medium or know a medium as well. Well, we want to thank our special guest and first in-studio guest.
Thank you, Mitch.
Thank you for having me.
And I hope that you telling this story now, yes, you've told it a couple times, but I hope that it
brings you a little bit of clarity as to why maybe it was you that saw it. We appreciate you being here, and guys, as always, live life beyond.